Right, hello guys, welcome back. Today we are concluding my short mini-series on what builds you should be taking on each class into the Edge of Fate, and I do believe I've saved some of the best till last. So to round it all off, today we are covering the Hunter. Several big changes are affecting the Hunter kit in the Edge of Fate, mainly the fact that Ascension is finally being changed to work with all class ability mods and perks, which we will certainly be covering here today, but also there are some truly spectacular looking builds for both the Arc and Stasis kits as well, though it should be noted that Ascension is the star of the show here, so let's begin with that, shall we? Before we begin, a small reminder to like and subscribe as it's a great way to support the channel. So what's all the buzz around Ascension? Why is it going to be so good in the Edge of Fate? And how can we best take advantage of this? Well, as I mentioned in the intro, Ascension is being changed to work properly with all class item mods including Reaper, Powerful Attraction, Outreach, Distribution, Bomber, and Dynamo, which is already an excellent quality of life change, but also Ascension is going to correctly count as a class ability for exotic perks that require ability usage, namely Spirit of Inmost Light, which neatly brings us onto the first build of the video, the Inmost Surturachne Hunter. I'm sure that all hunters watching are already very familiar with this powerful build, but also acutely aware of the fact that currently Ascension can't trigger the Empowered Abilities buff, which thankfully is being changed in a matter of days. And just as a quick refresher, Spirit of Inmost Light will make it so using any of your abilities will empower the other two with boosted regeneration speeds of up to 800% or 9 times base value for grenade and melee abilities and 50% for class abilities. And Spirit of Surturachne simply makes it so using your grenade ability grants 10 seconds of Woven Mail. The version of this build I'm about to show you is also slightly different from the usual way people tend to build it due to some changes to certain aspects being buffed or having their fragment counts reduced. So let's dive right in. For the basic abilities, we're going with the Silk Strike Super, but to be honest, you can change this to whatever is your preference, Gambler's Dodge, Threaded Spike, and the Grapple Grenade. Standard stuff for a prismatic hunter. The aspects though is where things start to differ, because this time we're going with Ascension, obviously, and then Gunpowder Gamble, not Stylish Executioner. Here's why. In the Edge of Fate, Ascension is being nerfed to provide 2 fragment slots instead of the 3 that it currently does, meaning that if you pair it with Stylish Executioner, you're only able to equip 4 fragments once the update is live, which doesn't sit right with me. And second, Gunpowder Gamble is being pretty heavily buffed in the Edge of Fate. Bungie are reducing the amount of self-damage inflicted by Gunpowder Gamble by 60% and are making it so any weapon final blows charge the meter, not just solar weapons, which will make getting back to it just that much easier. And it's retaining its 3 fragment slots, so despite Ascension going down to 2, you'll still be able to equip 5 because we swapped out Stylish Executioner. Some more notes about Gunpowder Gamble include the fact that because it's technically a grenade, it does in fact trigger the 10 seconds of Woven Mail from Spirit of Surturachne, and similarly, it will also trigger the Empowered Abilities buff from Spirit of Inmost Light, so it works with both of our exotic class item perks. Not much needs to be said about Ascension, it's truly one of the best hunter aspects, giving free amplified to you and your allies, as well as dealing decent damage to any enemies caught underneath it. And remember that it also triggers the effects of your equipped class ability, which for us is Gambler's Dodge. Therefore, our Ascension will also give back our Threaded Spike when used near enemies. As far as fragments are concerned, we're taking Hope, Protection, Purpose, Blessing, and Torches. Circling back to the actual exotic class item for a second, because of what Bungie told us in a recent twid, we now know that an Inmost Surturachne class item will convert into a Brawler archetype armor piece with a tertiary stat in Grenade, meaning that the stats present will be exactly 30 melee, 20 health, and 13 grenade. So, speaking of, let's talk stats. And for this build in particular, there are certain marks that you're gonna want to hit. The first of which ought to be getting 100 class so your Ascension recharges the fastest, 100 grenade for the same reason, then at least 70 melee to match current regen rates for Threaded Spike. In terms of what stats to push past 100, I believe going for 200 grenade is the play, or as high as you can get it while still retaining 100 in class and 70 in melee, because from 101 to 200 grenade stat, your grenade damage is increased, with the maximum being 65% at 200, which I believe should extend to Gunpowder Gamble, giving it even more damage. Weapons-wise, because we're on the Prismatic subclass, you should make selections that enable you to fully charge your Transcendence meter as fast as humanly possible, and my recommendation for this would be Tinashe's Mastery with Chill Clip and the VS Velocity Baton. But if you don't have the baton, you can easily swap it for Lord of Wolves and still be just fine. Taking a look at some of the artifact previews, we can see that Elemental Benevolence will make it so bestowing an elemental buff to allies grants class ability energy, so for simply using your Ascension near teammates, you're now going to get a chunk of it back. Then Shield Crush will also increase your grenade regen rate and damage by a further 25% whenever you're amplified or radiant, which for this build will be happening almost all the time. There's also also tightly woven in column 2, which states that while woven mail is active, you gain increased grenade and class stats, which is actually super perfect for this build since those are very important for us. The armor mods I use for this build are up on screen now, but just like with the last couple videos, keep in mind that these could very well change once the DLC actually drops. But regardless, they are a very good starting baseline, and don't worry, the dim links for all of these builds will be right down in the description. Moving on to build number 2, we have the one I am personally the most excited about, and that is the Arc Hunter, mainly due to one absolutely massive change that I haven't seen many people talking about, and that is the fact that in the Edge of Fate, the combination blow melee ability, quote, now works with Tempest Strike in PvE at full effect, which if you aren't fully clued up, now means two things. One, kills with Tempest Strike will grant stacks of combination blow, increasing the damage of your Tempest Strike, and two, kills with Tempest Strike fully refund your class ability charge, since that's how normal combination blow functions. And here's the craziest part. If you pair both Tempest Strike and Ascension together, in the Edge of Fate, both of these abilities are going to be able to infinitely feed each other. Because think about it this way, provided you have combination blow and Gambler's Dodge equipped, using your Tempest Strike fully refunds your Gambler's Dodge, aka your Ascension, then using Ascension near a group of enemies fully refunds your combination blow, aka your Tempest Strike. And from then on, the loop repeats, enabling you to continuously use both abilities over and over again, which I can't stress enough is seriously one of the coolest things ever, and I'm so excited to try it. Combination blow's maximum PvE damage bonus is also being raised from 309% at 3 stacks to 400% at 3 stacks, which just means you'll be doing even more damage than before. However, there is a very important piece of information to be aware of with this build, and that is that it requires you to have at least 70 in both your melee and class stats. Because if you didn't know, Bungie have changed the behavior of Gambler's Dodge to where it now grants a variable amount of melee energy that scales with your melee stat. And for it to be fully refunded, the required amount is 70. And conversely, in order for combination blow, aka Tempest Strike, to fully refund your class ability, by the same logic, you will also need 70 class. But to be honest, it should be very easy to hit these requirements, so don't stress about it. And I almost forgot, in the Edge of Fate, you no longer need to use your Gambler's Dodge near enemies to actually get your melee charge back. That requirement has been totally removed, and it works from any distance now. So let's not waste any more time and discuss how to optimize this setup. For the basic abilities, we're taking the Arc Staff Super, Gambler's Dodge, Combination Blow, and I've actually gone for the Flux Grenade, mainly because it's receiving a pretty substantial base cooldown buff, plus it's also going to be dealing 15% more damage to bosses, mini-bosses, and champions, so I thought it would be fun to give it a spin. I've already gone over the main reason why we're taking both Ascension and Tempest Strike, but another useful tidbit to know about Tempest Strike is that it has a subtle passive perk which states that defeating jolted targets grants a stack of bolt charge, and you should know that this includes any source of jolt, not just the one from the actual melee itself. For the fragments, we have resistance, beacons, frequency, discharge, and shock. To round off the build, there is no better exotic to pair with this than Gifted Conviction, and to be honest, you probably saw it coming from a mile away. Gifted Conviction is simply the GOAT on Arc Hunter because activating Ascension or Tempest Strike throws bouncing explosives at nearby targets that jolt and damage them. Jolting nearby targets grants you damage resistance, which by the way goes up to a maximum 50% resist. So it's great for survivability, and it works with both of our main subclass aspects, so what's not to love? Stats to prioritize in the Edge of Fate include at least 70 in both melee and class like I previously mentioned, but as long as you can maintain 70 class, then my recommendation is to full send your melee stat all the way to 200. That way your Tempest Strike deals an additional multiplicative 30% damage. Then for the rest, I would go for 100 grenade if you can, then pour the rest into super. Weapons wise, I'm actually taking a page out of the Arc Warlock book, and I'm recommending you to go for Delicate Tomb, a very solid exotic which can literally output double damage and even more jolt after collecting an Ionic Trace, which with Spark of Discharge we will be making fairly frequently, and don't forget that kills with Delicate Tomb have a chance to spawn Ionic Traces as well. And then for the primary, I've gone for the Attrition Orb's Kinetic Tremors Multimac as it's just a very reliable primary weapon, plus in the Edge of Fate, Attrition Orbs is getting buffed. The two artifact perks that will enhance this build are Shield Crush, which increases our grenade regen rate and damage by 25% whenever we're amplified, and Elemental Overdrive, where upon collecting an Ionic Trace, our arc weapons, aka Delicate Tomb, will be dealing even more damage. As per usual, the armor mods are up on screen for you to pause and copy if you need to, and I do want to reiterate that this build looks incredibly fun and exciting to play, so expect a full video on this at some point in the near future once the dust has settled over the new DLC. Moving on to the very last build, we have a relatively new addition, and that is the reliable Mask of Fealty Stasis Hunter build. Reason being, a large majority of the upcoming artifact perks revolve around stasis, plus we're also getting using a brand new stasis weapon in the form of the Graviton Spike exotic hand cannon, so it makes sense to have a fully kitted stasis build ready that takes full advantage of all of these things. My take on Mask of Fealty is also a little bit more non-traditional, as you'll see in a second, but besides that, this build has always been solid on both pure stasis and prismatic since its inception in episode Revenant, and today we are indeed going down the pure stasis route. So, just as a reminder, what does Mask of Fealty actually do? Mask of Fealty makes it so your Withering Blade impacts spawn small stasis crystals and refund a portion of melee energy on each and every bounce, with the exact amount being 7.5%, and also shattering either a frozen target or stasis crystal with a Withering Blade spawns a fan of 3 extra Withering Blades. So it's basically just a super spammy exotic that lets you have really good uptime on your Withering Blades and the rest of your abilities should you build around it properly. So let's find out how to do that, shall we? For the basic abilities, we have Gambler's Dodge and the Cold Snap Grenade. Then for the aspects, we first have Grim Harvest, so that defeating slowed or frozen targets creates stasis shards that once collected grant a small amount of health and a stack of frost armor. Then Touch of Winter. Touch of Winter is going to make it so your Cold Snap Grenade Seekers duplicate after freezing a target and create stasis crystals with each target frozen, which by the way is a super underrated aspect that's actually incredibly powerful. The bonus crystals make for some seriously good AoE damage, and in my opinion is a better choice than the traditional Winter Shroud. For the fragments, we have Rime, Hunger, Shards, Rending, and Refraction, which altogether will provide us with more frost armor, more melee energy from stasis shards, plus massively boosted grenade regeneration speeds and additional class ability energy gains. Stats wise, because Whisper of Hunger reduces your melee stats by -20, it's important you have at least 120 points allocated to account for this. Then try to also go for 100 in both grenade and class so they recharge at the fastest possible rate and reward the highest energy gains from external sources like stasis shards. For the weapon of choice, I will recommend you pair this build with the brand new Graviton Spike exotic hand cannon when it releases, because when in stasis mode, it creates stasis explosions and spawns additional Cold Snap Seekers that form stasis crystals when they detonate, which honestly sounds super fun, but for the time being, in the gameplay you're seeing, I'm using the Cryosthesia 77k instead because it's kind of the closest thing we have to it right now. Keep in mind that because Graviton Spike sits in the energy slot, it will actually become the first ever stasis weapon to reside in that slot, meaning you can run something like Tenacious Mastery in your kinetic slot and deal double the stasis damage for the first time ever. Looking at the artifact perks, the main one that stands out to me is Frigid Glare in column 5. This one will make it so scoring a precision kill with a stasis weapon while frost armor is active triggers a freezing burst, which honestly sounds pretty broken with how easy it is to get frost armor with this build, so as long as there isn't a cooldown, literally every kill you get will trigger a freezing burst, kinda like Aga's Scepter except it's primary ammo. So yeah, very excited for this build because of the ability spam potential with the new stats and upcoming artifact perks. For the last time, the armor mods for the build are up on screen now should you want to copy them, but also the dim links will be down in the description. So with that concludes this little mini series on exactly which builds you should be taking into the Edge of Fate on every single class. If you haven't checked out the other two yet, then I highly encourage doing that after, and if you enjoyed today's video, then a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. This video will be my last until the Edge of Fate releases, so until then, good luck with your remaining prep, and I'll see you next time at the start of a brand new era. Bye for now, dear viewer.